Hello and welcome to On the Couch, Conversations with Brenda Porter. Today's guest is Eric Little. Eric is an actor, a director, an educator. He hails from Alabama, where he got his first degree from Alabama A&M, and he received his master's from LSU. He has acted in all the theaters in Atlanta and directed in quite a few of them as well. He is a Susie award-winning performer, and we are going to sit today and have a fabulous conversation about all of the things that he is doing and has done. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Brenda Porter.
Well, sure. So I guess I want to start because it's school time and everybody's going back to school. And you are at Clark Atlanta University.
Yes, ma'am.
And what, with this COVID thing happening, what are the plans for your school?
It kept changing. We were first going to do an hybrid. We were going to do like freshmen and sophomores in person, and juniors and seniors are online. And I think, you know, the administrators were just trying to see how things were going to turn out because, of course, with the pandemic going on, it was changing daily. But they finally just made the decision this week, actually. We just got the decision this week that everybody's going back online, which is what we did, you know, when the pandemic started back in March. So everybody's going to be back online.
So as an educator, how do you teach theater online? Because theater is such a, you know, a communicative ensemble thing.
I think, one, we're still figuring that out because especially in the spring, it was crazy because we found out the information while we were on spring break. So what they did is they gave the students an extra week of spring break so then we could come together and kind of figure out how we're going to teach the rest of the semester online. And of course, like you said, one of the things, especially when it comes to performance classes, like something like theater appreciation, which I taught in the spring, it was different being online, but it wasn't as hard as a performance class or a directing class. One of my colleagues, that's hard because it's like directing class, you're teaching them how to direct, how they're going to direct, you know, theater on Zoom. It's just like, it's really kind of, you know, it's impossible. It's just different. What we did do this summer, we took an online training. Like all of our teachers at CAU, we all had to be certified. During that, I've learned some new things that I can use, like some new technology where they can record some things and things of that nature. But it's really, we have to shift our thinking in how we're teaching it. It's definitely difficult. I am not a fan. I would say that I'm not looking, like I'm looking forward to, of course, working with the students, but it's going to be a challenge because the main thing, you know, like you said with theater, because a lot of people are saying like, you know, it's like film and TV, which I was like, yeah, it can sort of be like that. But what people don't understand, especially when it comes to theater, like you said, it's community. It's about the collaboration in person. It's about blocking. Like, how do you do blocking on Zoom? Like, you can't. So it's really a lot more of readings. You try to do one-on-ones, sort of like how we're talking right now. Like, that's what I did. I did a lot of monologues. So it's really going to be a lot of trial and error. That's basically the short answer to the rest of that long answer.
So do you think that that's going to be the future of theater? Because everybody right now everybody's doing Zoom, everybody's doing online stuff, or they're doing showing programs that they've done before.
Yeah.
And you're right. How do you block on they're rehearsing online? I mean, I don't know.
I think it's one of those things where what's going to come out of this pandemic, people keep saying this buzz phrase, the new normal. So I think it will add, meaning, well, one, we got to see what's going to happen and what will be our new normal. Like everybody say, after this pandemic, I don't think any of us in any field, any parts of life are going to be the same. So I think
Amen.
this Zoom with theater, this things, I think it is going to change us, and I think it will add to it. But I think you can never completely take away the live experience because, like we all know as theater practitioners, that's the very nature of theater, is that it's live. Now, of course, we've seen a lot of people do over the years where you add, multimedia to theater, which is great, but it complements, it doesn't substitute. And I think that's the thing that I see that's going to happen. I think it will continue to complement. In certain times, it will substitute when you have no choice. And I think that's the thing where we are right now in America. And one of the reasons why we're still so far is because we can't control this the way that we want to control this. Or I'll say this, we could control it if actually, like we were talking before we got on, if actually everybody masked up, really socially distance, and really do those things, then we can control this pandemic more and get back to what we want to do. But if we're not doing that, we can't control this. And so we can't just make people like, well, we just gonna go back and do this. And it's like, yeah, but nobody's safe. So I don't know. It's crazy. It is really, really crazy. So I think definitely the Zoom is going to become a part of the new normal. But like I said, I think it will help complement.
Well, you mentioned masking up and such. I know that there's been a lot of talk about students, whether they'll actually wear their mask, whether they won't, what's required. And I don't know if that's at Clark too, but I know that some places are requiring them in classes, but not in other places. And like, well, they could get something where it's not required and then bring it to where it is, because like, I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole conversation.
Whole nother thing, yeah.
That is a whole thing. And audience members as theater, when theater gets back on its feet. I mean, we know that many places are predicting it'll be spring or summer next year. What do you think, or how do you think that will affect audiences coming to theater?
I think definitely people are going to be a lot more careful. I think we would definitely see a slow in the return of it because people will be, a little wary of coming back. I think theaters will think about maybe even trying to limit so you can socially distance, in the audience. Because, of course, like you said, everybody's thinking, how are we going to block, because even though if the actors up there might all have been tested, everybody might be good. But it's one of those things, it's also a thing of, the audience seeing it and be like, ooh, they're close. So they might not even be comfortable just saying, just that close. Speaking of it, I'm going to get back to this. This was funny. I was watching something one day. I can't remember what I was watching. And I could tell we've been in COVID too long because the actors were touching. And it was something, and something hit me. It was like, man, they are not socially distancing. And I'm like, yeah, we've been in COVID too long. Because I'm like, this was shot way before any COVID. Like I said, I don't even remember what I was watching, but it was something that was shot way before COVID-19. But it just tells you, as the viewer, it will take you out of the story because you're so busy thinking like, ooh, they close, ooh, they close. But anyway, so I think that's part of it too. But yeah, I think the audiences, I think they will slowly come back. And I think a lot of them will sit there with their mask on, which they might be like, I'm good with that. If I sit here with my mask on with whoever I came with and nobody's close to me, then I might be fine. But you know, you're going to have certain people who are going to come in, but it also is up to the theaters. Some theaters may require masks and say you can't come in without a mask. Some may not. So it really just depends on the guidelines and the enforcement of those guidelines. But I think it will be a slow build back, but I think we'll come back. It's just going to be slow.
I was laughing at you talking about people being too close because we were in the middle of Tech Week when we had to shut down. And the show that we're working on has a kiss in it, and we were just going to postpone it. And in the last month or so, and the kiss is important to the story. And in the last month or so, I've been going, oh, do I tear that set down and just forget about this show? Or is there some way I can work around that kiss so that we don't actually kiss? Because A, the actors probably won't want to kiss, but the audience really, as you said, will just be like,
yep.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's we were in the middle, or actually the day we were opening up the Brother Size. I directed the Brother Size over at Actors Express. And I remember we literally, the week that everything was shutting down, we were starting previews and opening happening that Saturday. Then, of course, we had to shut down. But, you know, we may be, I don't know if that's going to come back or not. We'll see. But that was one of the things, too, thinking about the blocking of that. Like, if we come back, how do I, as a director, have to think about blocking certain things? Now, luckily, because of the way the set was built, a lot of their blocking was pretty spaced out. But, yeah, it's one of those things now that it's like, yeah, you got to think about it now, because you're like you said, I think that's the thing is, it's number one, it's about the actor safety and their comfort, but it's also about the audience who views it. Because if you're so close all the time, they're not going to connect to your story, because they're going to sit up there wondering, like, did they have tests? Oh my God. Like, I mean, just think about it. That's what we're going to be doing. Like, you know, that's the world we're living in. Every day we get it, social media, we get it on the news, even little PSAs when, you know, those ones when it's like, in this time we living in, we're together alone. It's like, you can't get away from it. So it's always in our minds, you know. So, yeah.
Now, you mentioned directing over at the Outfit, at the Actors Express. Sorry. And you've done a lot of directing around town. You started out as an actor, is that correct? And at what point did you know that you wanted to direct, or did you transition?
You know what? Interestingly enough, I've always wanted to direct, and I've sort of, because number one, you know, as a teacher too, as a teacher, you're directing as well. So when I think back, I've been acting and teaching and directing for a while. It was just the fact of directing on a professional level, which really didn't technically start to 2015. I sort of jumped out there a little bit in 2014 with Rising Sage. You remember, of course, Paris Creighton?
Yes.
You know Paris? You know, he had a show that I directed called Chains. It actually was two shows together, myself and Mia Kristen Smith. Do you know Mia?
Love her.
It was called it was called Chains Broken. And Chains was about these guys. It was four men who had been put together. They were at a rally where a black man had, a black young man had been killed by the police. And they were at a rally and it broke out. So these four young men from different walks of life got thrown into a cell. And that was Chains. And then Broken, so that was all men. And then the second half was Broken. Mia directed that with all women. And that was, it was about just women who dealing with violence and either their loved one, someone, their loved ones. So it was great. It was a great combination. First half was Chains, second half was Broken. But that was, on a smaller level, but that was kind of my first step out there. And then next year in 2015 is where I got the major start, at True Colors with the major, regional theater. But yeah, honestly, way back, just going back, like I said, I always been acting, but I knew I always wanted to direct too. And my brother and I, and one of our friends, we used to write shows and do shows at home. And of course, during that time, like I was in grad school, so I would be the one mainly taking lead and directing certain things. Then I taught at high school where I directed shows. Then of course at Clark Atlanta, I've been directing. So I always knew I liked directing as well. And I wanted to do it on a professional level. I was just waiting for the opportunity. So, but it was one of those things, I never wanted to say and or, I just wanted to add a comma. Because, they'd be like, are you an actor or a director? I was like, no, I wanted to say actor, comma, director. Which sometimes can be hard. When I first started directing, and for a while, which I was like, all right, I'm good for stepping away from acting for a while. And then it was like, oh, everybody's like, oh yeah, you're a director. I was like, no, I'm still an actor too. But yeah, I always knew I wanted to direct as well. Always.
So
it's been
directing professionally and directing in an educational environment, what do you find are the main differences?
Resources.
Yes.
That's number one. When you're directing professionally, you have so much more access to resources. Directing educationally, it's mainly just you. I have certain help, but they're not like big production meetings. They're not those other things. They're marketing, all those things that you get at your hand when you're directing professionally. And so it just helps alleviate so much stress for you as a director. Like there's stress because you're still worrying about the show, but it's different. It's totally different versus when when I'm directing on a collegiate level or when I directed in high school, everything is mainly on you. And that's the main thing. Resources, you love that. Two, of course, the actors who you're dealing with. When you're dealing with, collegiate actors, they're good actors, but they're still learning. So when I'm directing, I'm also still teaching. It's right. I always say, like, if I'm directing a show, it's like an added class. Because when I go in there at night, to rehearse, I'm still teaching. Because right. That's a part of it. So it's like you have to teach a lot more versus if I get a great cast professionally, it's just guiding and it's a big collaboration and it's just so nice. And I remember once I really, really started directing professionally, when I felt that, oh, it was a beautiful thing. When you're just like, oh yeah, you're already doing that. I don't have to tell you to do that. Or, or they think of things and you like, oh,
that was nice.
Yes, let's continue to do that.
Yeah, and that takes you in another totally new direction in your thought process.
Good. And it's beautiful. It's but yeah, it's a beautiful experience. And the thing is, I have had some great students who I've worked with but you know, it's experience. It's all about experience, and it's professional. So it's just those, but the resources and the professional, you know, the professionalism of the actors, those are the main two differences, you know, beyond for directing professionally and on the collegiate level. Yep.
So you're an actor as well, as you said, actor, comma, director.
Thank you.
So what have been some of your favorite shows that you've worked on?
It's funny. We were just talking about this the other night. I was talking to some friends about some shows. My top probably 3 shows here. Let me make sure. Oh, wait a minute. You know, you
It's
start
hard,
to think
isn't
of,
it?
you started there. I was like, wait a minute, top 3? I don't know. Well, here are 2 of my top ones. So I know these are top 2, even though I was like, I can add a couple more. Miss Ever's Boys, when I did it True Colors back in 2009. I love that show. Fly, that I did at Theatrical Outfit. Both of those shows, ironically, connects to where I'm from, Alabama.
Ah,
Miss Ever's Boys, if you remember, is about the Tuskegee experiment,
right.
when they were testing on those black men who were farmers from like the 1940s to the 1970s. So, you know, that's connecting Tuskegee. And then Fly is about the Tuskegee Airmen. And so both of those shows, oh my God, I loved both of those experiences. They were beautiful, great roles, great cast. Man, it was just a beautiful time. I love the shows. It's what, to me, what theater is all about. What they spoke about, both of them dealing with history, but they're teaching you things, but it was enriching. It was all of those things. Another show, Brokeology. I don't know if you saw that one. That was at True
I
Colors.
did not, and I wanted to, but I did not.
Oh, it was a great show. Great show. It's about a family, and it was great cast. It was Afema Omalami, myself, Enid King, and Jasmine Guy. So and Kenny Leon directed it. It was amazing. It was a great show. It was about a family. Afema plays Enoch and I's father, and he's sick, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with him. So it was comedy, but it was also drama. So that was a great show. And then my last probably top show, I probably got another, but definitely is Superior Donuts. I did that over at Horizon.
And you got a Susie Award or a nomination for that one? Like, award.
That's the one. That's the one I won. Yeah, I won Susie for that one. Yeah.
Well, no wonder that one's in that list.
It was great. It was great, and that's a beautiful thing. It was great.
So, and you've done film work as well?
I have. You know what's interesting? I've definitely done more theater acting than film and TV. Because with film, I had, and it's been a while. Like you know, I've mainly, and I probably have done more TV than film. Like I've done commercials. I was on an episode of House of Pain, episode of Necessary Roughness. Film, I did like Lottery Ticket, and then I've done some independent stuff as well. You know, some independent film and independent things here and there. But yeah, and then one of the things, and I don't know if you, and I may have given you this information or not. I'm a Georgia Lottery host. I think I may have said that or not.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I do that a couple of times a month, which is cool. That's totally, you know, it's a different feeling, but I enjoy it. It's different. It's definitely
really
different.
So, and I did not know that until I read that on the information. I was like, really?
I've been doing it and it's interesting. Some people don't know it because if you don't, you know, I've been doing it for 4 years. But what happens is, I know, because it was so funny. Somebody texted me the other day that saw me and was like, "When did you start doing the lottery?" I said, "Well, I've been doing it for 4 years." But I'm like, I only do it a few times a month, and unless you're sitting in front of the TV when it comes on, you may not ever see it. You know,
Well, a nice steady gig, a little, you know.
nice steady gig, and you understand that it's a nice steady gig. It doesn't take up a whole bunch of time. Nice little extra money, and it's in our field. I get to be on TV, call lottery numbers. It's cool. Yeah. And it's definitely different. The thing about it is, it only lasts about 56 seconds. But in those 56 seconds, you have to think of blocking, because you have certain things you gotta say your words, call the numbers out, be on point with how the camera moves. If the balls take a little longer, you listen to the music. So it's once you get used to it, it's not as hard. But sometimes people think like, oh, it's easy. I'm like, if you come in there and do it, it's like those 56 seconds, you got to do a lot in 56 seconds, but look like you're just calm and chill.
Wow. Because I would have thought, well, kind of like bingo, you just call the numbers. 5. First number is 5. Second number is 2. Yeah.
And in essence, it is. But you know how it is. It's just like with theater. If one little thing gets off or something happens, you have to react to it, and you have to know how to do it. Stay calm, make sure, I messed up recently, and it was one of those things because running out of time and things of that nature. And then, things, sometimes it's not me, sometimes it was a technical glitch, and you have to worry about that. Like once there was a technical glitch and I had to keep going, and we were live. And it was one of those moments I saw it and I'm like, oh my God. And I had to keep moving because it's live TV. So that's the big difference. That's why I say it's different from theater, and it's different. It's similar in theater because it is live, meaning you can't stop. And it's similar to film and TV because it's film. But the difference is when it's live TV like that, with theater, you might have a second to, even though if you mess up, you get a second to, figure it out and keep going because you have that time. With live TV, and they give you that amount of time, you don't have that time. Because if you mess up, thinking of, it is, they keep going to the next thing, whatever else in the rotation. So if you mess up, it's just like, and we're on to the next thing. So that's the big difference. And that's why it's like, I have so much more respect for news anchors because, I'm only on there for a few seconds. When they're on there calling the news and doing what they do, it's a gift. I have so much more respect for them now than I have ever had before doing this. So much more respect.
Yeah, I don't think that I would be good at that.
I think you probably I think as actors, that's why they get a lot of actors to do, like with because there's another guy, John Crow, who's the main person. He's an actor as well. And he's amazing. Like he's been doing it for years. He's amazing. Renee Miller, she's been doing it way back. She's amazing. But I think actors, you probably would, because of, once again, your theater training, it will kick in if you know how it is when you're like, oh, something went wrong. You better keep moving. It's a show. So it'll get you for a second, but at the same time, it's like you got to keep moving. Yeah.
Yeah, but the camera's right there. They'd know when I went up. They'd know when something went wrong. I'd be like, okay.
Exactly.
So I want to go back to the directing for a second. So have all the shows you've directed been Black shows?
Let me think. Or Black themed?
Yeah.
Professionally?
Professionally.
Yeah, I think the only one, even though it still was a black playwright, but yeah, I'm thinking of the shows. I'm like, let me go back. I did a show over at Theater Emory called "We Are Proud to Present," and that's the short title. I actually would have to remember. It's one of those long titles, and but it was still Black themed, but it was way different. So the show, it's a show within a show. It's a group of actors who have found these letters by the first genocide of, and now it's been so long, I'm trying to, I mean, it hadn't been that long, but you know how it is. You're like, let me make sure I'm getting it right. Namibia. It took place in Namibia, in Africa. And it was the Herero soldiers, and it was a genocide of the Namibian people. And these actors, half of the cast is white, half the cast is Black. So it takes place in present day, but they're going back to act like they are putting on this presentation. And like I said, it's like, we are proud to present, da, 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 da. And so they become, the show is very, very interesting because in one sense, they're the actors and they're putting on the show. And we had like a PowerPoint where they're going up and they're just talking about this and they're talking about this. Then they just become, and we're actors, and they're drinking water and they having,
Got you.
snacks. And there's like, I think that was good because they're putting together the show about a genocide. Half the cast is white, half the cast is Black. But what happens is the closer they get to where the genocide actually happens, the more happens between the white actors and the Black actors.
Huh.
And by the time you get to the end of the show, it's combustible because the energy is not only the Namibia genocide, it's also the energy between these white actors and these Black actors trying to figure out race issues. It's a great piece. It's very, so I guess why I bring that show up is it is about race, but it's a different show about race. Like it's different than something like when I directed The Mountaintop or when I directed Fetch Clay Make Man, where it's like definitely like Black show. It's like this one has a totally different vibe to it. It was a great show. We because it was at Theater Emory and it was a part of a repertory, and there were 2 other shows. So we didn't get that many shows. We only got like 6 shows. And so I wish more people would have had a chance to see it. It's been one of my favorite experiences directing. And when I first started reading, I was like, what is this? Like, I was just like, and it's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It did.
Yeah, go ahead.
And one of the reasons I asked that question is because with so many African-American artists calling our theaters to be accountable for their racial equality.
Yes.
I think a lot of times that we say there's a Black show and we're going to get one Black director and some Black actors, and this is going to be our show for the season. And we might put a chocolate chip in the cookie mix every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I don't think at this point, and you might differ, at this point, I don't think that people go, oh, here's a show. Who's a great director? I could, Carolyn Cook could direct, Eric Little could direct, it doesn't matter. White, Black, male, female. And so I just wondered if you had the experience of directing non-traditionally Black or Black themed pieces, and if you thought that would change. And how do you feel about someone that's not a person of color directing a show that does have a Black theme? I mean, those are conversations that we have all the time.
It's such an interesting discussion Like, it's interesting enough. I love the fact that I mainly directed Black shows because I've enjoyed those shows. Now, if you ask me, like, would I want to direct something that is not necessarily all Black? It depends. Like, if it's a good show and I really want to direct a show, yeah, I would definitely love it. If it's a great show and I feel like I want to direct it, yes. And if I got that opportunity, yes. Because I'm like you. I think a great director can direct great pieces. However, I think there are certain times where certain pieces are called for that you need a very specific director with that very specific cultural background who can connect to the piece. And I think this happens, what happens is, so when it comes to like white directors directing Black shows, the main problem that happens there, and this is why we get so irritated, because not saying, can a white director direct a Black show? It depends. If they're a good director and they know how to connect to it, they can. I would never say like, no, they can't ever direct it. But what happens is sometimes because those white directors continue to get so many more experiences, we'll get pissed off because it's like, and even if it's not me as a Black director, but I'm like, what if it's Brenda Porter or some other Black director out here? And I'm like, they, you know, or whoever, I'm like, if I don't get it, there's some other Black directors who might be sitting around and they want the work. And then you look at it and you're like, they would understand that better than this director. And this director could actually probably still go direct another show, a white show or some other show, and get that. But you're going to take that experience, you're going to take that opportunity away from this Black director and give it to this white director who will have more opportunities. And I think that's where the problem comes in. And that's where it is, you know, because let's be clear. If it was something that was very culturally specific to them, they're not going to bring us into it.
That's true.
They wouldn't. They wouldn't. And which, in some respects, I understand that. That's like, you know, we used to have a Jewish theater here. I think it kind of went, I don't know if it is Jewish theater in the South or one of them. And the people who ran it were Jewish. And you know, as far as I know now, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know, and it's like very specific. I'm sure either if they're not going to have a Jewish director or Jewish, you know, they're going to have somebody who understands this, which is understandable because that's a very specific culture and they should get that respect. So I think that's what it's about. It's about the specificity of the culture. Do you have this person who understands it? So I think when it all said and done, they have to think about that and give opportunities more to people of color, you know, more to Black artists. So yeah, and I know I'm going on, but so it's such an interesting discussion because it's hard. It is really, really hard, especially when sometimes if you see a show and it's directed by, you know, a white person, you're like, you know, and I'll say this.
Do we start judging it knowing that? Like if we didn't know the person was white, would we judge it the same way?
I think it's a seed that's already planted. And so even though you tell yourself to let that go, there's something in you that's growing already. Because when you see it, if you hear about the show, you'll be like, oh, okay, they doing this show. That sounds interesting. Okay, who's in that cast? And there's some good Black actors. You're well, actually, either you do one or the other. You actually usually ask who's directing it or who's in the cast first.
Right.
You know, who's doing it, who's directing, who cast. So then once you hear who's directing it and you hear what it's about, you immediately sometimes, you know how we do as Black people, we had this, And and the thing is with that is already a seed that's going like So it doesn't necessarily mean like it could totally be that I hate it, but it's already like I'm already coming in with sitting with the side eye. But I think so. Yeah, I guess to answer your question, we go in with a little bit. They can change your mind though, and that one of the best feelings is when you go into a show and you have a negative feeling, and then all of a sudden they change your mind in a positive way. That's a great feeling when you be like, you know what, I was wrong. But I've had that, and I won't say the show. I remember I saw a show here in Atlanta, and it was an all-black cast, and I think the director was like, the director was white. And once again, actually at the beginning, it was a little bit there for me, and I'll be honest, but it wasn't full. But it was something that happened with the black men in the show. And the way it happened, I was like, because I was like,
not my brothers.
It just irritated me. I was like, I don't think, and I wasn't saying not even if I was just the director, but I was like, I don't know of any black director that would allow that moment to happen like that. Like it was something about that moment. And it may not have bothered anybody else, but for me, not even just as a black director, it was as a black man. I think that I just was like, it was something about the moment. And I was just like, and I remember I was just like, And that's when it hit me. It was like, the director's white. So I think it, and that's sometimes that's what happens. It's like, it was something, and I'm going to tell you who made me start looking at that more. A person we both love, Gary Yates.
Yes, I love myself some Gary Yates.
That's my dude. I love him. Yates, when I got here, I got, like you said, I went to LSU, got a MFA in acting. But when I came here, especially the first couple of years, it was like I was in some postgraduate learning from people like Gary Yates. Matter of fact, the first play I auditioned for him, you were in the show, The Story.
Oh, yeah.
See, I remember. I remember when you, Michelle McCullough, God rest her soul,
yes.
That was my girl. Who's that? Cedric Pendleton was in that show. I remember it because I auditioned for it. And Yates remembered me, and I ended up not booking that show, but I booked another show. And there started our relationship. And, Yates has always been like a mentor to me. I mean, that's why I'm at Clark Atlanta right now, because of Yates. But some of the things that he's taught me, and especially when it comes to men in a certain period in history, they act a certain way. He started teaching me that, like, I knew it, but he really started getting to the specificity of it when it happened in, he directed me in G's Band and Theatrical Outfit back in 2007. And he came up and he started talking to me because I was playing a man back in that day. It was like the 1930s. And he said, no, he wouldn't do it like, this is this time period. This is this. So he's always implanted that in my mind. So now when I'm looking at things in the show, now connecting it back to the show that I was telling you about, when I saw that, I was thinking with Yates, and I said, Yates is right. Because I said, it's something about this moment. I'm like, it's not feeling right. And I'm like, but I had a black male director who understood the culture, who could tell me. So that's what made me better. So I think that's, for me, I guess the answer to the question is about the specificity of the culture. And I think that's how you get, like, who's the right director.
Is that the same? Do you feel the same way about white writers? Because there are people, even as the artistic director at Impact, I've done a couple of shows that have been historical shows about African-American people, men. Actually, the two that I'm thinking about were both written by white men who just were enamored by these personalities
Mhm.
and the power of these people. And so I found myself questioning, should I, do I, because this is a white person telling this story? Or do I say, at least somebody's telling the story, let's put it out there? So do you feel the same way about white writers and Black stories?
It can be. It can be. Like you said, and let me clarify. I would always say you want to give, because the main reason we want to give Black artists a chance first is because, one, we need the opportunities. Like, we sometimes rarely get those opportunities. So whether it's Black director, Black writer, it's like you always want to say, well, let me see what they're bringing to the table to give them opportunities. But yes, with writing as well, because and the thing is, you've seen some great scripts sometimes by some white writers, where they've written some characters, and you're like, man, this is a great character. It's a great Black character. And then other times you're like, they missing something, and they're missing. But that to me is, once again, and this is something, once again, this is what Yates has said this before too. There are times where you got to put into the show, and you're not changing the script. We always know that, we respect the work, but it's something about that you can put certain things in the show that's not on the paper, certain cultural things that they didn't get written, and I think that's what you have to do. If you choose to do that, you know, um, but yeah, it's now some Superior Donuts. I play a Black character in that, Franco, and it's written by a white male, Tracy Letts. But I love the character. I thought he wrote him well. It was a great character. So some of them, because when it's all said and done, a great writer is a great writer. But it's just about, I guess, like I said, going all the way to, like I keep saying, the specificity of the culture and just trying to get the little nuances.
I like what you said about the bringing that thing to the character. One of the best pieces I've seen was actually directed by a white male, Tim Hamburger, but it was a Black, all-Black cast of Tennessee Williams' The Glass Menagerie. Carol Mitchell-Leon was in it.
Was Michelle in that one too?
Michelle.
I heard about it.
And I was amazed because I never really liked that piece that much. I was just like, oh, it's just a, I mean, I know it's Tennessee Williams, I'm supposed to love it, but it's just like, and of course I went to go see it to support my people.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this piece really is about a lot, and maybe it's, I'd never seen a good production of it. I'd read it, I understood it, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, oh, the way they are saying these lines with the cultural information and background that they're applying to it, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. This. So
yeah, no, I heard about that production. I don't even know if I was in town yet or something, or if I was, I missed it. But let me tell you what's funny. I thought the same thing about The Glass Menagerie. I thought it was a good play, but I was never bowled over with everybody saying, oh, it's a classic. And for me, when I was in grad school, I did a scene from it. And so I enjoyed the scene. I did the scene between Jim and Laura, and I enjoyed the scene. I thought it was a good play. Ironically, the first time I gained more appreciation from it, it was still from like an all-white cast, white director, but it was all people here in town who I respected very, very much. It was over at Georgia Shakespeare, and it was directed by Richard Gardner. Oh, it was a great cast, and it was Joe Konechevich, Bethany Ann Lynn, Mary Lynn Owen, and Travis Smith. Like, I remember it, and because it was such. Like, after I saw their production, I said, I got a great appreciation of this story. But also, it started. I can't remember. It was Kat. It might have been Kat Conley, or might have been. I can't remember who did the set. When I walked in, one of the most amazing sets I've ever seen. And like I said, I think it was Kat. So shout out to Kat Conley if it was you. I think. If not, whoever it was, the set was great. But it was like broken glass was the set.
Oh, it sounds like her. It sounds like her.
And so as soon as I walked in, I was like, my God. So the set already had me. And then their performances, Rich's directing, it was great. And I think this is the thing, and you said something, I wanna say this. I think sometimes what happens in this debate between white artists and black artists, or white artists and other people of color, is that there's this thing almost like we may hate them or we don't learn from them. Some people may think that it's like, and it's like, that's not it. Oh, because let's be clear. There are some great work that we love from white theater makers. One of my favorite shows is an old show called Orphans by Lyle Kessler. It's a white show, or written by a white playwright. But I think it's that thing of, it's almost like I'm going back to, it's what we deem as classics. Sometimes theirs get more weight as a classic than something like, not even just August Wilson, but Charles Fuller, or trying to think of somebody else in the Negro Ensemble Company. Those type people is like, or even new people like Dominique Morisseau or Katori Hall or Marcus Garley. It's like, but the newer, those white artists would get more respect. So it's like, I'm not trying to say either or, I'm just trying to say a comma and. It's like, yours is great, but ours is just as great. And or sometimes, which is interesting, we know this, some of their work will be pushed up and you be like, but I got some work over here that's better than that. And it's like, we learn from each other, and I think and even going into when you were talking about the theater work, it's about equality, it's about respect. That's what it's all about. That's why it's like, we're still fighting the fight that Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King, and all that. And that's what I think is so funny to me about 2020. And somebody, it's like, we're still fighting that fight about equality. That's what it's still about. It's still about not being equal. But yeah, sorry, I know that's the interesting thing. Even going with like somebody like Spike Lee. Spike Lee is a great filmmaker, well respected, but he also knows, if you ask who are some of his influences, beyond somebody I think, like Gordon Parks and things of that nature, Martin Scorsese, a white filmmaker. But also when you look at Spike is innovative. Spike doing some things that some white filmmakers don't do because he's Spike Lee. It's like people should study him just like they study Scorsese, and I think that's the problem, in my artistic opinion.
And because you are the guest here today, it's your opinion that counts. So before we end our session today, is there anything else that you really are dying to share with the people of Atlanta, of the world?
Seek progression, not perfection. It's something that I teach my students. Students come in all the time when they're coming into rehearsal, and they're looking to be perfect. And I'm always, and I always telling them, and I can't, I told them this one day because I saw it with one of my students, and I was like, stop trying to be perfect, just progress. Is it like, if you're trying, number one, and this is the main reason why I said seek progression, not perfection. Perfection is complete. It's stagnant. If you're perfect, you're done growing. If you seek progression, you're always growing. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't ever attain a certain level of satisfaction or a certain level of success. It just means that you're never complacent, because you're always seeking to progress. So don't ever try to be perfect. And I think that's the thing. And I know that's so anti what we're always taught, like try to be perfect. And I just found out, and I try to even remind myself of this, stop trying to be perfect. And it's unattainable. And like I said, too, the main thing is, if you get to perfection, where do you have to go? And I think this is not only in theater, this is a life lesson. Seek progression, not perfection. You always keep growing.
Words of wisdom from Eric Little. Thank you so much, Eric, for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Hey, this was great. This is my honor. I always love you. Thank you so much.
I love you too, and I look forward to seeing you on the boards, and maybe one day being on the boards with you. That would be great.
I know. We got to work together in some respect. Yes, please.
Take care.
God bless you. You too.